Hey everybody, welcome back to Office Hours.
Hey,
Hello.
welcome back.
You
We
know
got
that
a
it's Friday.
we got a
When
crowded house here. I
we
love it.
we do lots of friends. Ariana's here, Cody's here, Megan, our friend Narek. Hello. Hello, welcome back to the show. So I am Andrew Hochradel. I'm a brand identity designer, design educator, and Adobe mentor here, and this is Office Hours, the show where we help you level up your career, your general creativity. We're just here to help you. We're your creative Sherpas. Um, who are
Helpful
you,
hand.
Mr. Man in the other box?
I am Nick Longo, based here in Los Angeles, graphic designer, educator as well. Gosh, can I call myself an Adobe mentor yet? I don't even know.
I'd say yes. I will
Okay,
bestow that upon you.
that would be cool.
Yeah, we'll call it
Technically,
there.
yeah. Let's
Yeah,
let's just say that. Yeah,
let's do
but
it.
we are glad you guys are all with us today. We have a big episode. I get to kind of sit back and relax and kind of like be with the class and ask questions
Yes.
because Andrew is going to be talking about something really cool. Take it away. What are we
I'm
doing?
so excited. So this is my absolute favorite topic to talk about. Today is going to be very technical. So you're going to want to rewatch this one. You're going to want to take some notes. I'm going to deep dive into some concepts that are core to visual communication. So this isn't just design. It isn't UI UX. Isn't photography. It is all of those. It's really about how we experience and translate the world. I need you to mentally prepare yourselves. When I teach you this, it's going to break your brain. As you see the world, everything that you look at is going to be different, and it's kind of going to destroy you for a little while. So, before that, I want to tell you about one way that you can get involved with Adobe Office Hours. Nick, what's the best way to get involved with this show?
I think it would be our Discord channel.
That's right. Our Discord right
Ah,
here, bit.ly
yeah.
slash fall semester slash AL. That's a place you can get plugged in. A lot of people are posting their homework, posting questions, and leveling up their skills. And that's right. Every week we do have homework. If you go to this link down below me now, bit.ly slash Adobe Office Hours, you'll be able
Yeah.
to get all of our homework. You'll be able to get all of the presentations for each week and stay up to date, as well as see the syllabus. And Nick, what's coming up next week? It's a big week for us.
Next week is our midterm, I
It
believe.
is.
Yes, we're going to look back and kind of give you guys some of the best things that have come out of everything that we've done so far. I can't believe we're already going to be at midterm. Just seems like yesterday we were coming up with this little idea, and here
It's
we
true.
are.
Nick, what do
Yeah.
people need to have ready for next week? If they're working alongside us, what should they have ready to go for next week?
Ooh,
I know it's a question.
that's a good question. Is it going to be,
I I think
what do you
maybe
think?
just what you've been working on. We'd love to see what you've been working on.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about leveling up your portfolios. You set a goal at the beginning of the semester to get better. And next
Yeah.
week, we'd love to see
Ooh.
how you've gotten better.
Why don't we do this? I would say this would be a good time to update anything you've been working on your and make a Behance project so you can throw it into chat. Maybe we can look at it real quick.
Yep.
That kind of stuff would be really great. Again, it could be totally in progress because midterm is all about checking in, seeing where you're at, and have you guys put together something that we can start maybe conversating about. I think it'd be awesome to see.
Absolutely, yep. And
Let's do
if
it.
you want to, go ahead and you can drop that stuff into the Discord. We'll mention it at the end of the show as well. And there are a couple people who are checking in from other countries. We have something very special for you today. At some point in chat, I know it's against the rules, so mods don't ban me. We're going to have you post if you have a language that uses non-Latin characters. We're going to need those from you a little bit later. So stay tuned, get ready with those, and we will love to see them. All right, are
Now
we
that's a
ready to
tease.
just like
That's a tease right
it's a
there.
tease? Yep. All right, everyone, are we
Where do
ready
we begin?
to jump into the lecture of the century?
We need wait, you needed sound effects there, man. You needed
I
something.
know, I know, right?
Trumpets blowing, like, you know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
All right.
And everyone, I turn on some chill vibes, so let me know if you can hear them or if I should turn them down or whatever.
Sweet.
I figure we'll need them during this time. All right, let's
Ooh.
hop over into our lecture. That's right. This week we are talking about semiotics, and Nick is going to kind of act as the chat. If you guys have questions as we go,
Yes.
toss them in there. Nick will be helping with that, and he also will be popping in with his own questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're just going to take it away and get going. Tons of information. Get those pens ready, and I'm just going to talk for the next 30 minutes.
Go for it,
Here
man.
we go. So semiotics is the study of signs and symbols. I like to think of it as translation, right? When we're translating something from one language to another, right? We're taking something that we don't necessarily understand and putting it in a way that we can understand. And so here we're translating the audible or the spoken or something that may be written into visual, right? It's basically semiotics is the way of seeing what things sound like, right? Really abstract and a little bit crazy. Yes, it's going to be awesome. So semiotics is the basis for visual communication. It is the grammar of visual sentence structure, right? There's going to be a lot of metaphors today, putting English along with visual communication. So everything that we create and communicate can be broken down into semiotics. There are three key things that we'll talk about, but everything, literally everything, can be broken down this way. And just like sentences have nouns, verbs, prepositional phrases, design, art, and really visual communication has icons, indexes, and symbols. So three different things. Nick, do you ever think about when you're reading a sentence or you're reading a book, do you ever go back into English class and be like, oh, here's the noun and here's the verb and then here's a prepositional phrase? Like, do you ever think about that when you're reading?
Sometimes I do. I think when I read, sometimes I have to go back. My mind can drift so quickly. So I go back and then try to do that structure. And I think that helps me understand it more because of how rooted it is in those keywords being triggers, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. So a lot of times when I'm reading, I'll skip over a lot of the things, and right in your brain, you're just hitting like, what's the noun and what are they doing, right? Noun, verb, noun, verb, noun, verb, prepositional phrase every now and then, right? You're like, this character says this character says this, now they're going over here. And you're just tracking that, right? It's giving you step-by-step information. That's what we're doing visually, right? You need to think of it as your design being either a word, a sentence, or a paragraph, and every word that you're putting into that paragraph is giving information, but the words are elements instead of just written words. So let's continue on. Hopefully we're not getting too confusing. And if it gets too confusing, we'll have the like tap out word be banana. If it's too much and you need a break, just start spamming like the banana emoji in chat, and I'll like stop and we'll recap and we'll catch up because I know it's pretty dense today.
And that will be our symbol.
Yes, exactly. And we'll talk about it in just a second. That's perfect. That's a perfect example of a symbol.
I love it.
And really, as well as an icon. So icons, indexes, and symbols. These are the three things that you need to know and understand. We communicate visually using these three things. These three core things are literally everything. The only thing that you've ever used in Illustrator, in Photoshop, in anything you've written, in anything you've ever seen is one of these three things, either an icon, an index, or a symbol. And I know that's crazy to think about, right? You're like, the world is so diverse and creative and there's endless possibility. And you're like, no, there's really just three things. And that's, you just use them in different ways, right? So just like nouns, adjectives, and proper nouns, these make up the sentence structure of a visual idea. Claudia's here. Look at that. Our friend Claudia. Hello.
Awesome.
So much fun. I'm excited you're here, Claudia. This is going to be fun. So icons, indexes, and symbols, these are the core of semiotics. All right, here we go. So first up, let's talk about icons. Icons are something that it looks like what it is, right? So an icon is a direct representation. This is a lot of design. As you'll see stylized illustrations, you'll see, something that you can relate to the real world. Icons are super easy to use when you're talking in semiotics because it literally is like, I want to communicate the idea of a donut. Let's make a donut, right? And you just make a donut and it's like, cool. There we go. Hey, Joe, what's up? So an icon is what it looks like it is. It can be a digital or physical representation of a real world object, right? So icons can't be abstract ideas. They have to be some kind of real world application.
Gotcha.
Icons can be stylized to represent the object. And so I actually have, I'm going to flip over on my screen to Illustrator. Here we go. And I actually have a bunch of dogs here, right? And so these, right, aren't actual dogs, right? I can't like throw a treat to them or pet them. They are icons of dogs, right? They're a visual representation of what a dog would be, right? So this is an icon for a dog. It is what it looks like. And yes, Steve, we are going to talk about Egyptian hieroglyphics as well. So continuing on, that's icons. Super easy. Next one, a little more complicated, indexes. So indexes are kind of like the wild card of semiotics, right? An index is something that gives information or implies something. Nick, What would you
Yes.
guess would be a common use of an index in design? Something that gives information.
Ooh, an arrow. Um, anything that's probably telling you action or something to do, right?
Yes,
So, gosh, a fire icon.
absolutely. Yep.
Could
So
be anything.
yeah, indexes a lot of times you'll see used for direction, to give
Hmm.
instruction, or to show movement. Those are probably the most common uses of indexes. The one that I see all the time is like movement lines behind something, right? Lines that
Yes.
look like it's moving. And even
Yep.
though in the real world, like when we run, unless we're doing like the Naruto run, like we don't leave lines behind us unless we're like
Yeah.
in some Tron world. But we've just understood that those lines are indexes that give us information, of that this object is moving, right? So we'll
Yes.
look at the sentence structure where you can kind of piece it together that, right, if an icon is maybe a noun, right, that it's like the
Hmm.
dog, if the dog is moving, the index would be the lines, right? The line is giving the action verb.
Hmm.
So we're getting a little crazy. Let's keep going. So indexes
No
also can
bananas yet.
be,
No
yeah,
bananas yet.
exactly. Indexes can also be very abstract, and this is where I love picking out indexes, and trying to figure out where they are, because sometimes indexes just indicate something, right? So it's not
Mhm.
giving you information to do something, but it's saying, like, if we see smoke, then that indicates that there is a fire somewhere nearby, right? So an index, yes, exactly. An index is something that gives context,
Context.
or information. So it is literally, if there's smoke, we know that there's a fire, right? An
Mhm.
index can also be something abstract, like a color, right? So if you get a white box, maybe it has a cake in it. If you
Mhm.
have a pink box, it's going to have donuts in it, right? You know that the pink is an index that gives me information and informs what is to come, which is donuts. So it also can be used to tell us if it's hot, if it's cold. Indexes are the action verbs or
Mhm.
the adjectives,
It,
of,
God, that could almost like cover everything. It could tell you what
yes.
emotion to think. It could tell you, should you be scared? Should you be excited? Like honestly, right? It could almost be anything.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And my favorite index, let me change over here and then zoom in. My
Mhm.
favorite index, let me make sure we get the right. Here we go, right here. These are my favorite indexes, right? These face indexes right here, right? And even though it's not design on our face, right? If I'm like this, you know that I'm angry, right? That these are giving you information that because of the way they're shaped, now I'm conveying the emotion of angry. If I'm here, now they're conveying the emotion that I'm surprised or I'm happy, right? And so something very simple like eyebrows. Oh gosh, look at that. Glorious skin. Something like eyebrows are things that are indexes, right? They give information. Um, there's some questions in chat.
Yeah.
Uh,
So laundry labels, are they considered indexes?
Sometimes they'll have indexes on them. So if you see, right, the iron with like the X through it,
Mhm.
right? So that's where it gets a little complicated. That is a combination of an icon, right?
And
An
then what to
iron
do?
that looks like an icon, right?
Mhm.
And then the index is giving us information. It's saying don't,
Don't.
don't, and really the X is a symbol, which we'll talk about in a second. But
Good.
the index doesn't have to be a physical thing. It can be the relation of things to each other. So there, the index is that there is an icon of an
Mhm.
iron. There is a symbol of an X, which we just understand means no. And the
Yeah.
index is that they are overlapped. So the index is not the whole thing itself. The index is giving us the information that they are overlapping, which means that because the X is on top, that's giving us information that, in kind of caveman terms, you would think iron, no iron, right? If that makes sense. So
Mhm.
I'll actually show that in a minute once we talk about symbols,
Excellent. Yeah.
how that kind of pieces together.
Perfect. I love that.
And yes, indexes are fantastic for infographics,
Oh,
using color, using
totally.
the relation of the heights to each other. That's really all
Yes.
that infographics are indexes that give you information.
I would say at this point, everything you've covered, including the index part, it's probably its biggest advantage is the fact that it is universal and
Yes.
it doesn't need translation because it could work anywhere.
Yep, exactly. And so These principles go all the way back to, we talked about Steve Kostaboom was saying Egyptology. Yes, these concepts go all the way back to hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics would use the direction that any kind of living thing, either it was a person or an animal, the direction that that thing is facing is the way that you would read the hieroglyphics. And so the direction of the illustration is an index to inform us where to start reading, right? So it's not telling us, hey, start here. We understand that the direction is an index that gives us information of where to read, which is really cool.
Well, I will never look at the Ghostbusters logo the same way again.
Right? And it's great because Ghostbusters is actually a great example, right? Because we have icon of a ghost, right? We have symbol of a circle with a strike through, which culturally we understand means no or stop or, like cut that out.
Yeah.
And then when we put it over, it's ghost, no ghosts.
Yes.
Right? So it's interesting. So the last part is a symbol, and that's what we were talking about of the slash through of the X. A symbol is something that represents something else and is understood within a cultural context. And so this is, let's not do that yet, actually. So we use symbols of letters and numbers to translate visual communication and from verbal communication, right? So I'm going to hop over into Illustrator real quick.
Excellent.
And let's talk through this, right? So chat, this is actually going to be really fun because I usually give this lecture in person where you can make sounds, but you can't in chat. And so this is actually going to be really funny. All right, so here's the point that I'd like to submit to you with symbols. The point is words aren't real, and I can back it up, I promise. So this here is a symbol, right? This is a symbol. It is shapes that have been put together that mean absolutely nothing unless you understand it in a cultural context, right? And so what sound does this letter make? Nick, you can chime in here since chat literally can't make sounds. Tuh, right? So that we know that this visual symbol, right, which is literally just two rectangles, for some reason we understand within our cultural context that out of our mouth we audibly need to say tuh, right? But here's what's interesting, is if I add another symbol, now this other symbol is acting as an index to tell us that this no longer makes a t sound. Now, with this symbol added, the index is telling us now it says th, right? So this is where it gets super complicated, right? And we're thinking and trying to break it down, that it's not just about the individual pieces, it's about their relations to each other, right? So these two symbols put together, th, right? And let's do this. So we have THRO. Independent symbols, but when put next to each other, say throw, right? Throw. But again, we're going to add some more context, add a couple extra symbols, and now all of the indexes are working together, right? We have symbols of a T, an H, an R, an O, a U, a G, and an H, right? And individually, right? If I saw this, how it should work is I should be saying to you, t, h, r, a, u, g. Right?
Totally.
That doesn't make any sense, but our minds are thinking that we understand the symbols, and we understand that each of these symbols have indexes built in that give us extra information about what to do, right? Just like an arrow is telling us to go to the right, we know that a T next to an H means that we need to say th, and then OUGH says ooh. So we say through instead of tahararu.
That would be kind of funny if that's how we did talk.
I know, right? So the next example of a symbol is math. And math is actually the most universal language that we have because it's not tied to everything. Everyone pretty much uses the same numbers and the same systems. And so we have a 3, which is a symbol, and then I add a little t. And the interesting thing here is, right, this T actually as a symbol means what?
Plus.
There we go. Nick's getting an important, he's popular.
I'm also on delay, so I just realized what you were trying to probably say there.
Got it. So we have these, right? And again, that image in the middle, right? That symbol in the middle of the cross is acting as an index to say, hey, these two symbols, we're going to put them together. And more than that, not only do we want to put them together, we want to say if we put these together, it is the account of 6, right? And so each
Mm-hmm.
of those symbols is giving information with each other. Got it? Okay.
Yes.
Whew. All right,
Yeah, I love
let's take
that
a breath.
Elizabeth just threw in that math is really the only universal language,
Yes,
like in a way,
exactly.
you know?
Yep. And so let's do this. And this is where I promised. If you're in chat and you have a keyboard or you speak a language that does not use a traditional Latin alphabet, this is breaking the rules, but I'm just going to do it. Um, Go ahead and put a character in chat that is not a traditional Latin character. And what I'm going to prove here is that for those of us that speak English that use the Latin alphabet, right, we understand that each of these symbols, right, how to put them together. We're like, oh yeah, it says through. Of course it says through. Like, of course that, right? But that's because symbols are only understood within a cultural context. Our culture understands this, right? As people start dropping some characters from other languages in there, you'll notice you'll stop understanding. You'll have no idea what to say, no idea how to translate that from a visual into an audible. Giratima, there we go. So
There you go.
we
Yep.
have no idea, right? To Giratima, that is the same as us saying, "Oh yeah, a T makes a T sound," right? Of
Yep.
course we know that since kindergarten.
Yep.
But
Oh, look at that. We're getting a bunch of them.
exactly, we have
This
no
is
idea
great.
what those means to us that only understand the Latin alphabet,
Mhm.
because symbols, again, only function within a cultural context. So thanks to everyone who dropped those in, and also welcome. Thanks for watching around the
Oh
world.
yeah, we got. Williams are pretty cool looking.
Yep.
All of these, to me, isn't it funny? Those look like great logos. Like I can see those being aesthetically pleasing. They're balanced.
Yes.
They're stylistic. They're original because again, we don't know what they are. If you don't recognize that language, you just don't know.
Yep, exactly. And yes, Enye could count. Enye is an interesting one because it is a symbol for N with an index of the tilde to make us say, instead of N, it's saying Nye, right? Interesting. So symbols can also function, and this is probably the most common use, like you said, as company logos, right?
Yeah.
That you can look at something like Geico, right, who sells car insurance, and they're using a gecko, right? And so technically the gecko is an icon because it looks like a gecko, but it's also acting as a symbol to represent car insurance, right? And never in the wild, right? If you're like in Brazil and you're walking through the forest and there's like a gecko, you're like, car insurance.
Yes, exactly.
You're never
Geico.
thinking that. So, yeah, exactly. So symbols have to be informed, and that's why you
Yeah.
see a lot of companies marketing when they do new logos, because you have to inject meaning into a symbol, or else it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, again, symbols can serve as icons and indexes. They can be all over each other. It's kind of crazy. All right, but isn't a symbol different than a letter in another language? It can be. Yes, it can be, is the answer, I think, to that question. And yes, even Latin doesn't translate, I agree, into French. Yeah, there's different pronunciations. So continuing on, it's very important for us to understand the flavors. I like to think of visual communication as cooking, right? That we need to understand what are the ingredients that we can have. Elizabeth, yes. Car insurance? Yes. So we need to understand the flavors, which means we need to understand how to use icons, indexes, and symbols so that we can translate things. And the way that I like to do that is to ask some questions. As I'm looking at a piece, if it's inspired me, if it's made me feel something, is this: how does it make me feel? And then break down what elements are making me feel this way, right? It's the same thing as like, oh man, I really enjoy this mac and cheese. What kind of cheeses did they use, right? Trying to pick that out and visually sample what's going on. What information is being communicated, right? What have I understood from this? What is my experience? And then going further to say, how do I know that? Like, how do I just know that in my brain that the information has been given to me? Let's figure out how they're delivering that. The other one that I love to do is, if I couldn't speak, how would I mime this, right? If you're playing a game of charades, how would you communicate that idea? And then you think about, what shapes am I making with my hands? What's my face doing? What's my body doing? That I can then translate into motion lines, into eyebrows, into facial expressions, things to help give that information.
Yeah.
How to interpret. Did I spell that right? I did. All right, so let's practice.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Ready?
Just like to your point, for some reason I looked at that too and I was like, that looks wrong, but it's right.
Yeah. You see, it's funny because you see the like symbols of the English language completely disintegrate when you look at a word for too long, because you stop seeing the word and you just see the symbols, right? You see the symbols of the letters and you're like, cool, these are all just like meaningless shapes because I've looked at it so many times that I've forgotten that it was a word.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love hearing people say that in the middle of the day on like Twitter. You'll see someone be like, "I just looked at the word laundry. It doesn't even make sense." Like, like it's true. It happens all the time. Yeah.
So this is where we're going to break it down. And this is we're going to be going back and forth between Illustrator and our presentation. So this is hopefully to help you all understand a little bit more how to use semiotics and how to leverage icons, indexes, and symbols in your visual communication in your designs. Again, if you have questions, drop them in and we can get to those. So here's the sentence that we are trying to communicate, right? So Nick, you and I are talking and I say, hey dude, the red dog ran to the stop sign, right? Okay. So the red dog ran to the stop sign. Already in there, you have in your brain, right, a visual representation of what that is. Okay. So now I need you to communicate that to your friend, but you can't talk. You can't write it down and you can't talk. You need to communicate that idea. Well, let's go back real quick and talk about English, right? Let's talk about breaking this down from a grammar. And most of you did this in like elementary school and have never come back to it. Well, it's back, baby. The red dog ran to the stop sign. Yeah, don't call it a comeback. So let's break this down. So red is the adjective, right? It is augmenting the noun of dog, right? The dog is red. The action verb, what is the noun? What is the dog doing? It is running. It is ran, past tense verb. And then prepositional phrase, to the stop sign, right? That's telling us the dog is red. The dog is running. He is running to the stop sign, right? And the stop sign is a proper noun because it's not any sign. It's a special sign known as a stop sign. So that's breaking down, right, the sentence structure, how this sentence is communicating this visual idea that Nick has in his head of what's happening in the story I told him. Yeah. So continuing on, let's translate those directly into semiotics. So Nick, if you're going to create that image, what would you do?
Well, first I'd have a red dog.
Okay.
Yep. I'd probably put some action lines behind it. Obviously, the drawing of the dog would look obviously in running pose. Maybe I'd go for the side profile to show everything off, but I'd definitely have the motion lines behind it as if it's running.
100%. So right. Let's break this down a little bit. And I actually have some puppies, good old puppers, I just hit something so weird. So many things happened. What just happened? Okay, whoa. Every now and then I hit a set of hotkeys that is not the right thing, and it just opened like 90 windows. There you go. So we have dogs here, right? And one of these dogs, right, they're cute and they're all sitting, but we actually want one of them in motion, right? So let's take this little guy. He looks like Wishbone. Oops, right here. We're grabbing him and we're going to translate this. So the red dog has run. So the dog, if we look at our presentation, the dog is an icon, right? A noun translates to an icon. So this is a dog because it looks like a dog. Super easy. I'm going to do a quick little trick that I like to do to make this a red dog. We're just going to multiply and change it to color. There we go. Now he is a red dog. And we've used the color of red to give information, right? Because the dog is red, we use the color to tell people this dog is not a regular dog, it's a red dog. A little crazy. And next we will have some motion lines. So the dog was running. So let's go ahead and add some motion here. And what I'm doing is just adding in some lines. Super easy way to show motion. These are indexes to tell us that the dog is in motion. Now another thing that we can do is we can use an index of a skew, right? And that's the relation of the object or the morph of the object to then tell us that it's not just standing, he is actively moving, right? He looks like he's flying here. And from
Wonder
there,
dog.
We're going to do a stop sign. Now, a stop sign, if you think about it, is not an icon. It's a symbol, right? Where else can you have a shape that just has 8 sides? Right? If we have a shape that just has 8 sides, and let's say that it's blue, right? We're like, cool, you made it like a cool octagon? I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
But if we make that shape red, oh, now I know that I have information that I need to stop here, right? So it's a symbol
Instantly.
that gives us an index, right? That it tells us to stop. So we have it, and he is running to the stop sign. Let's do a nice little thing here. There we go, a little post. And there we go. We have the dog, and he has run to the stop sign. So let's break this down a little bit further real quick. The icon, right, in our sentence of the red dog ran to the stop sign. The dog is an icon because it looks like a dog. He is red because of the index of red. He has motion lines telling us that he is running. And then we have the stop sign, which is an icon and a symbol that he needs to move toward, right? And the relation of the two is telling us that he is running to the stop sign and not away, right? So the relation of the direction he is facing is actually an index as well. Because if I reflect this and he's going the other way, now the dog is running away from the stop sign, right? It changes the story. Crazy. All right.
Just crazy.
So intense. All right. So now I want to show you a couple other small things about semiotics and show you an artist who is very, very good at this, and then maybe look at some work and break it down in terms of semiotics. So this is an artist by the name of Anton StanKowski, and he was a specialist in creating and communicating abstract ideas and non-visual processes. Right? Think about that. So non-visual processes, how can I visually represent something that is not visual, right? And then how can I communicate complex ideas using indexes, icons, and symbols, using semiotics? Question from Giratima, can abstract stuff work as indexes even though sometimes they may not be very apparent? Yes. Yes. So if you want something to feel soft, if you want something to feel blobby, if you want something to feel gooey, those are all abstract shapes that you put in there that acts as indexes to give you an emotion, to give you a feeling to your design, right?
Gotcha.
So you can very much use abstract things. If you want something to feel sharp, you can add extra lines. If you want it to feel like it's abrasive, you can do all that using indexes. So chat, this is my question to you. What is this an ad for? What is this? This is an advertisement that Anton StanKowski created that was run in a magazine for a company. What is this? What's happening here in this visual piece, I guess? So try to break it down in terms of what you see. Just interpret and put in chat anything that you're experiencing with this. Just toss it into chat, right? If it makes you feel this way, if this element pops out to you, drop it all into chat, and I'll drop his name in here.
Ooh, got some good guesses coming through. This is interesting. Ramen noodles, hair dye. Love that. That's a good one.
So as you keep doing
water
these,
filter.
So let's say the ramen or noodles, right? That's because you're relating these to an index of ramen, right? An icon, right? It looks like ramen, and so maybe it's an icon representing ramen.
The hot, cold air. My first thought was that
windy,
changing of temperature.
Yep. Yeah, so a lot of people are actually getting really close. This is usually a difficult one to pick out. And yes, it is for a heating company, which is interesting. So let's break down why we all understood that this was for a heating company, right? No one had experience with this. I didn't say what it was. Literally, we visually looked at it and figured out what it was. And yes, a mitochondria, I actually think that every time I look at this. I'm like, ooh, it's a graph of a cell structure.
Very much so, right?
All right, so let's break this down. Nick, what things do you notice right away?
I'm feeling the flow first. I'm feeling like those noodles, let's call them, are giving me some motion. So, and as they go through the red barrier, the red object, they are obviously being transformed from cold to hot.
Cool. So there is an index, which is the flow or the movement of the shapes. And then there also is another index that is the change in color that is giving you information that something's happening?
Yes,
cool.
Correct.
And so that's interesting because the index is both the color and the relation of the colors to each other, right? So we talked about shapes being close or far apart or facing each other. This is about both the colors being hot and cold, but also the relation of those colors.
Okay. Gotcha.
So let me drop in one more thing. So the index is the color blue. And what is blue telling us?
Cold.
Cool. So blue is cold. And Nick, why is blue cold?
Water, ice, history tells me it's blue.
That's exactly the right answer.
Yeah.
If there is no reason that blue really means cold, other than culturally we think that blue stuff is cold, right? Blue stuff could be hot, 100%.
Yeah.
But we understand that. So here is a really interesting scenario where usually color is an index. Here it is acting as an index to tell us it's cold, but the cold is actually a symbol, right? So
Yes.
the blue is telling us it's cold, and that is a symbol that we just understand, right? And so this is a very rare occurrence of blue, a color, acting as a symbol. And the same thing on the other side for the red, right? So we have blue on one side telling us it is cold, red on one side telling us it is hot, and then we have the relation of those two telling us that it is once cold and then was hot. What else is in here that is communicating to us?
There's definitely a transition, right?
Yep.
It's before and after. So something's before the red bar, something's after. So there's sequence, there's action. And then there's an end result. It has now transformed and changed to something different, and you're actually seeing it in action.
Exactly. And so this line coming down the middle is an index, is an index to tell us that there is an action happening, right? That's saying, hey, this index is saying that this once was blue, and because of this shape in the middle, it is now red, right? If this didn't have the shape in the middle, we would think maybe like, oh, the air current is just, changing. And here, by having this, it is representing a water heater. So it has become a symbol for a water heater. Symbol, water heater. And that is because it is in between saying the blue, once it passes through this object, is now in the red, right? So this very easily could be, we could put an icon there that looks like a hot water heater, and we would understand the same idea, right? But by abstracting it and use a symbol, it gets more interesting, right?
Yeah.
And this is where in your designs, try to think, okay, if I'm just gonna make an icon of something, just make an interpretation of what it is, and it looks like what it is. What if I did that without any icons? What if I only use symbols that are understood within cultural context? What if I only used colors as information, and start playing around with that? So the other thing that I want to show you is, I want you guys to look this up. So Anton StanKowski, this is the artist that we were just talking about. Go and do some research on him. Google him, find that name. He was a master of showing invisible processes through semiotics, of kind of using these. I believe he did an ad for a light company. Let me see if I can find it here. Here it is. So he did this ad for a light company. It's an electric company, that's what it was, to show the electric voltage being converted from AC to DC, right? And he's literally just used lines and black and white, no index of color. It is only symbols and indexes to communicate an abstract idea or process, right? So it can get pretty intense and pretty crazy. All right, Nick, I think that this is when we start transitioning into some kind of wrap up, and I think we need maybe a recap. What are some things that you've learned today that are takeaways for someone that's experiencing this for the first time? You haven't done a lot of work with semiotics before.
Not at all. And I think it just gives you a sense of how to better educate or communicate, I should say, in what you're using graphically, and color, shape, size, things that all of those stuff are associated with, that we think of, how to be clear with your communication, maybe even how to do less is more, right? Like sometimes you might be too complicated in showing 9 things. Can you zero it down to 2 or 3 and communicate what you're trying to say better because of the symbols and breaking it down to this kind of formula?
Exactly. And it very much, like you said, you can communicate too much. And we've seen that so many times. We've given you feedback so many times to where, right, we're like, you need less. You need less. Just edit it down.
How do you
That's
do
like
that?
you trying to make like a word count on a paper, right? But it's
Hmm.
like the firefighters went to the fire and they fought it. The fire was very fiery. While they fought the fire, the firefighters fought the fire, right? A lot of times your design is saying that, right? You're like, okay, you have
Yeah.
so much fire in here that like we get it, like it's fire. You
Yeah.
only need to communicate that idea to us once and edit back and think about what the sentence is that you're building.
Yeah. What about this direction of how you read? Because like, so Andy brought up a good point. Like we are taking full advantage of the fact that we do read left to right. Because
Yes.
but some languages go the other way?
Yes, I believe that
Yes.
Hebrew reads the other way.
Yes. Hmm.
And there's actually a style called Baustraphodon. Look that one up here.
Oh
Actually,
God, that just sounds like a great heavy metal band.
I know, right? Straphodon. There it is. I'll go ahead and put it in chat for you because, like, even I don't know how to spell it. So, Baustraphodon is a term of writing and reading that basically means as the ox plows the field. And so you start on the left on the first line and read left to right. You stop at the end of the right and then come down to the next line and read right to left. So you're literally doing like a snake zigzag
Yeah.
all the way down the page. And that informs you, right? And actually, there's a great example here on Wikipedia. Let me put it over here. There we go. So a great example here of Baustraphodon. You start on the left, you go this way, you stop, read the other way. And the index of how those symbols are facing are what are telling us how to read, right? In Arabic, yes. Arabic 100%. So the index, just like the dog was either running to the stop sign or running away from the stop sign, even though this is an amalgamation and a bunch of symbols put together, right, for us to read, there's also the index of the way that the symbols that we are familiar with are reading, right? If we're writing in Arabic, if we're writing in another language, we don't understand that index. We don't know which way the symbols are supposed to go,
Hmm.
so we have no idea how to read it. But
Yeah.
here, because this is in the Latin alphabet, we know that these symbols are supposed to be a certain way. And so because they're not that way, it's giving us an index to read it differently than we normally would.
Yeah.
And yes, Baustraphodon is like literally insane to try to read. I'm so glad nobody uses it anymore. So I'm very glad that they don't anymore.
There's a reason for that.
It's totally insane. And yes, Leonardo da Vinci did something similar. Those people are Slytherin. Yes, you have to be Slytherin if you write in Baustraphodon. I love that. Nick, here's what I
Yes.
want to do with our last like 10 minutes is I want to look at a project of yours.
Okay, let's do it.
And I want you to. I'm trying to which project do we want to look at? Literally pick any one.
Whew, you might be a better judge. You want to call one out from there and see what you think would be a good one to dive into.
Let's just pop in visual writer semiotics. Yes. Oh, yes, a thesis. I want to write a thesis. That would be awesome. Cool. So let's go into 14 Cannons Brewery.
Yes.
And here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through and pick out things that it's communicating to me. I don't really know anything about this other than it is a brewery because the symbols together here say brewery. Right? If I piece those symbols together, it says brewery.
Cool.
So I know it's a brewery. Looking here at some of the icons that you have, right?
Yes.
This is a light bulb, and this is an interesting one because this is thinking, okay, he's thinking about an idea because often the icon, right, that it's an illustration that looks like a light bulb, but because you have indexes that are telling me that that is turning on, to me, then it turns into a symbol of an idea, right? That there's a visual or the verbal expression of, the light bulb just went off. And I see that here communicated visually, right? The light bulb is an icon because it looks like a light bulb. The indexes of it turning on, and then understanding within the cultural context that a light bulb turning on is representative of an idea. It's a symbol of an idea. So here using a lot of other icons, and then getting into the actual brand.
Yeah,
let's pop in, and I'm actually going to go down. Let's just leave right here on the type treatment.
Good.
So here's what we are going to break apart. We're going to break apart all of the different elements that are visually communicating to me. So where I first go without reading any of the words is the type that you've chosen is a type called Tuscan. It's a Tuscan kind of lettering, and it was meant to be overwhelming. It was meant to be big and bold, and so that is giving me energy. It's making me feel like there is some action happening. This isn't like this isn't my mom's like wine spritzer. This is something that's going to be dark and heavy, and especially because of those points. The points are indexes that give me information of something feeling like it is pointy, like it is sharp.
Or it's on guard, right?
It's like exactly, it's on guard. I relate it to almost an index of a symbol of like a throwing star or a landmine or something like that.
I think in a way too, when you think about a ship with cannons, they're basically, it is their defense. Yes. It's like spikes. It's like a, what do they call it? Like a fence with the thing on the top.
Exactly. Yep. And
so
then
you're protecting yourself.
The terminals that you have in some of these letters here are acting as indexes. And this is where in design, you can use indexes as a kind of wink and a nod, right? Just like we talked about smoke, meaning that there's a fire. Yeah. You can communicate abstract ideas without just putting that idea in there, right? So here, right, you've communicated the idea of cannons, that it looks like it's shot. It's got these cannonball holes. Yeah. And you don't have to put cannons on here. You don't have to put cannonballs. You're just using the index of these little terminals to me is informing like, oh, maybe it's been shot. Maybe this is a remnant, right? These holes give me information on indicate that it has been shot by a cannonball, right?
There you go. Yeah.
And so that's giving me that information. The relation of the letters to each other is telling me that it all goes together, that I should read it as 14 Cannons Brewing Company instead of Cannons 4 Brewing Teen Co., the way you've put them next to each other. The another index is the contrast in the way that the type is the contrast in the type, I guess. So the cannons is very sharp and pointy and aggressive, and then 14 is very strong and stoic, right? So it's telling me that that is not the most important information. That is kind of a secondary, and again, the index of the size that we have there.
Yeah, supplemental.
Yep. Continuing on the colors. The color is giving me index that this isn't something that is flat, right? That it feels like it is physical, like it might be flying toward me. It's giving it motion and it's giving it substance. A lot of times using gradients takes something from being flat, and the gradient acts as an index to inform us that it is physical, that it has substance to it.
Love that. Yeah.
Great job. Great job, Nick. I haven't seen this.
Look, I was a pro at this and I didn't even know it.
That's the thing. So if you are a designer, go back and look at your designs, because there's a lot of times that you can pick things apart and then figure out how to better communicate, right?
Yes.
That maybe you've used a word visually, right? So maybe you use an icon, an index, or a symbol visually that you actually meant something else, right? Yes. That let's say, what are the two words that I mix up all the time? What does magnanimous mean? Magnanimous. What does that mean? Generous. So magnanimous means generous. A lot of times I use that in terms of describing something that is large, which is the wrong word, right? And so just like sometimes we use the wrong word in a sentence, sometimes in your design, you're using the wrong element to communicate an idea. So going back, now that you understand how to break apart your designs, how to visually communicate, going back and saying, am I saying the right words with this design? Sometimes it tightens them up and makes it a good design to a fantastic design.
And it's just that little fine tuning. You're right. It might be just a way of looking at something and adding one more layer to help communicate it more solid.
Exactly. And I love that. Somebody's saying, Nick, you're pretty good at this. You should do it for a living. Love that. So continuing on down here, there are some interesting indexes going on in the tyrannicide. Tyrannicide. Yes.
Tyrannicide. There you go. That's a great one to tongue twister.
Exactly. Again, you're using the indexes of the type. The serifs on the end of these letters are indexes. They're indexes to tell us that it is fancy, that it's a little more upper class, it's a little more refined, right? Instead of using a sans serif, which has index that it is clean, it's modern, that have become understood.
Yeah.
We have all these little lines here, which aren't really acting as indexes or symbols. The most index that they're using is to draw the direction of your eye. So here it's not giving information to tell you to do something. It's not indicating that something else is happening. All these lines are doing is telling you, hey, your eye, don't look at this space. Like put your eyes somewhere else, right? And so I think that is actually really interesting when you look at something, you're like, it just feels like an aesthetic. It needs to be an intentional aesthetic, right? You can't just have random lines in there. These lines are filling in that white space to push your eyes to the letter, right? So they're acting as an index to tell your eyes and give them information to look at the numbers instead of the white space, right?
That's a good idea to think of them as almost like a physical highlighter, right? Like they're a way to cause a little bit more emphasis to where you want to, and also maybe to pull it back in certain ways. Like hierarchy is still one of the biggest things I still feel like we all need more kind of fine tuning with. And this might be a great way to think about how you can take all of these lessons and turn them into great assets for your design work from this point on.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And remember, and this is the same thing that I see on book covers all the time. If you are ever working on a book cover, always know this, okay? The information, the cover of a book is an index. It gives information to what is in the book, right?
Yes.
And with that, you want to be using the cover as an index to tell people what to do, right? So you're not just saying, oh, this is flashy, this is cool. It is, communicates this abstract idea. Here's a secret to doing a book cover. Always have index that pushes them to open the book. So it needs to always push to the right if you're doing a book cover. And that can be in the composition, that things can be looking like they're moving to the right, and that will give you the index that I need to keep going to the right. It can be anything that is like a read now being in the bottom right corner, because we know that we read that way. It is an index that then pushes us into the book. And so you've done a great job of that, as sometimes indexes aren't necessarily for us to take action. It's just for us to tell what our eyes to do, right? Just for us to tell our eyes what to do. That's, yes. So putting lines in there that's saying, hey, don't look here, look over here. Or, hey, just look here, right? You've all gotten those ads that have like something random circled in red, right? And we're like, ooh, look at that. And it's nothing, it's just clickbait. Red is acting as an index to say, look here. And the circle is acting as an index to say, this is important.
Yes.
Right? So you can use those. They're very powerful to control people's emotions and their eyes and where they look. Leverage all of those indexes, all of those symbols, all of those icons. Today was super, super intense and heavy.
Yeah.
As always, you can follow up and watch this and get our notes from this lecture right under there. I've mapped them all out for you. Just the presentation has been uploaded as a PDF, so you can circle up on that. And let me know what you thought about today, chat. We're going to be doing another one of these with Nick a little later on, where he kind of takes it away and does a full-on lecture. We're both teachers, and so we love just lecturing. So let me know how you liked this format today. It was a little different than what we've done, but hopefully you enjoyed and learned some stuff. And Nick, what can they do next? What are the next steps from today?
From this, one thing that just came to mind, I think would be an interesting thing, is to look at the social media and the things that you're being bombarded with on a daily basis and how they're using this in a lot of stuff that's out there on social media.
Yep.
The symbols and the things to make you have an opinion on something before you've even probably read something. And I think if anything, use these more as filters for what you see and what influences you. Because that's a big topic that I think a lot of people are talking about, this, what we're seeing on a daily basis. So they're using it sometimes too much, because it could have a negative connotation as well, or a persuasive connotation. Yep. So I think it's good for us to not only use these correctly in our own thing, and I think I would just say, look around you and see where these symbols and indexes and everything are really being used good, and where they're maybe being used wrong.
Exactly. Yep. And with that, what I want you to do for your homework this week is to examine the things around you, understand how they're broken down into icons, indexes, and symbols, and then try to communicate some kind of story to me using our Discord. So you can get into our Discord right over here at bit.ly/fall-semester-al. I believe the mod just posted in chat. Yes. And your homework this week will be to post in our homework channel something that uses icons, indexes, and symbols. Create whatever you want, and then make sure you note them in there and post it in homework to communicate an abstract idea and give me information of how to read it, how to experience it, how to engage with it, or to do an Anton StanKowski and just communicate something totally wild, absolutely invisible using semiotics. So check that out. Make sure you work on it. And we'll be back next week for our midterm. So make sure that you're also working on your portfolios, your website, whatever, and we'll be checking in then.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. That's going to be great because we've been seeing some really good homework stuff in here. Maybe even some of this stuff could inspire you to do a new project or a new portfolio piece as well, what you're doing from our homework.
Yes, absolutely. So make sure you check all that out, get involved, and tune back in next week. I also will be live every day next week with the Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge. We're taking a world tour, learning some stuff in Illustrator, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Pacific time as well for our friends in Australia. So we will see you next week on the next episode of Adobe Office Hours. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys. Have a great weekend.